welcome back to another season of Well, Why Not? So we are starting on season 4 with this episode. And of course, during the time that I wasn't recording, I was thinking of episodes, thinking of ideas and things that I wanted to discuss for this upcoming season. But the more and more I planned about it, the more I realized that it would be dishonest of me to not recognize and not speak about the current state of things, the current state of American politics and how it's impacting the rest of the world. So I decided my first episode would be dedicated to just that. So today I just wanted to sort of have a check-in, and I don't think I've done this on previous episodes. I just feel that it's important for me to speak on this, since the intent of this podcast is to be about my life. So I think since last November, me, along with a lot of people, and we're not going to talk about, majorities and percentages and things like that, but along with a lot of not only Americans, honestly, people around the world have been feeling anxious, confused, disappointed, worried about what's to come next. And we had somewhat of an idea, because this is not this administration's first mandate or first term. So I think just having lived through that, knew that this was going to be turbulent, potentially controversial and troublesome for certain groups of people. But since then, I would say we've gotten that in spades. We've seen definitely a huge increase in the level of, I guess, surprises, unexpected decisions, just the number of executive orders alone. Like, it just keeps your head spinning. So I think a lot of people may believe, as an expat, as an American who's living abroad, how does this impact you, and why is it a big deal? Well, first, because I'm an American, and I did not leave with the intent of never coming back. I didn't cut my ties to the country completely. The majority of my family, my extended family, still lives there. So I think it's been obvious in previous episodes as well that I do feel quite attached, and who knows, in the future I may end up living back in the US. So there's that. I think secondly, it's important to recognize how American policy, and oddly enough, whether it's domestic or foreign, it impacts the rest of the world. So decisions being made about how foreign aid is being allocated, and just with that example alone, we see it's not just the countries that were benefiting from this foreign aid, quote unquote, directly, but also U.S. farmers. And there are companies within the U.S., there are organizations within the U.S. that employ a lot of people through the projects or programs that are typically funded through foreign aid. And that's, to me, a very small example. And just recognizing it represents less than 1% of the total budget. And so seeing things like that happen, I think it's very apparent that decisions being made by the U.S. administration has a huge impact in the daily lives of not only Americans, but people living abroad as well. And just people, and when I say people abroad, not just referring to expats, just other communities outside of the U.S., other countries outside of the U.S., programs that were being implemented just came to a halt. And those programs sometimes were emergency relief. Some of them were economic development programs that were helping them stay and not have to make the difficult decision to immigrate in the first place. So definitely feel impacted. And it's not because I don't physically live in the US that I'm somehow disconnected. And for those who have never lived in the US or who have never even set foot there, are impacted by what's happening. So that's given me a lot to think about, because I think initially my emotions were sort of all over the place, and I needed to grieve a little bit. I needed to just let myself go through that process without putting a pressure of what do I do next, what happens next, and how do we get to fixing this. I definitely was not, and I don't know if I am even there yet, but I am starting to think of next steps and things that I can do going forward, so that I don't feel helpless, and that I contribute, whatever it is that I can contribute to making sure that those who don't have the resources and the privilege that I have are not forgotten, and that we, as members of the same communities of society, work to protect them and to work alongside them and make sure that they are able to thrive just like the rest of us want to do. So I would say, just briefly, in terms of what it's been like being abroad, or specifically being in Ecuador, with the changes to the administration in the U.S., it's been interesting because actually just this past Sunday there were elections here. So I think a lot of Ecuadorians are also focused on their own political futures and changes or potential changes in administration and what that could mean. But they also are very much aware of the linkages or the ramifications of any change that happens in the U.S. In the past 5-6 years, a lot of Ecuadorians have made the difficult decision to leave home and migrate to the U.S. Some of them have done it through documentation, and some of them are still undocumented. And so there are families that are depending on those family members who are there, who are working, and who are able to provide some support. They're obviously worried about what's going to happen to them. And I don't think it's not even just as simple as, them being deported and having to come back here and not being able to support financially. I think there's also the fear of the deportation process itself, and understanding or hearing about how extreme that it's going or it's headed towards. And so knowing that your family member may have to be not only detained, but in inhumane situations, after some of them risking their lives to get to that opportunity in the first place. So I can't say that, it's at the forefront of many Ecuadorians' minds, which has been helpful to me in some ways, because it does remind me that life goes on, and there are so many communities, there are so many people out there who are going to live their lives. They're going to persevere, and they're going to try and push through any obstacles that exist. And it also kind of gave me the perspective of what is my day to day, like how am I, and how is my family directly impacted day to day by what's happening. And up until now, thank goodness, not much. There hasn't been any change really to our day to day, but I think the worry is that could change. And if we are not vigilant, and again, making sure that certain protections that have always existed and that we somewhat took for granted are maintained, are preserved, then we may be having very different lives in the next year or two, or in the next 5 years. And I also think about the future generation, young people now, just making sure that, I feel, is a responsibility of us, for us as adults as well, is to make sure that we're leaving wherever we are, we're leaving that place better than we found it, and we're leaving it for them in a way that they can thrive, and they can take it to the next level and keep improving it. So So I think that kind of sums up again where like how I've experienced these past few months, and and at the same time, of course, I think now more than ever, thinking about the podcast and how I can provide information and potential support to anyone thinking about making a big change, taking the leap, as I've said in the past, and moving abroad. I will do subsequent episodes about why it's not wise to run away from problems. It's sometimes, if there are definitely circumstances where there's safety involved, it's life and death really. And in those cases, of course, it's survival. But in making a decision where you're able to weigh the pros and cons and really plan and really think about what it's going to be, I just always say, you need to do some internal work and make sure that you're okay. And that way you'll be okay wherever you are, and you'll have the tools that you need to overcome whatever situation that you will eventually be facing wherever you live. I mean, there are difficulties no matter where you are. They're just different. And with that, I think for me going forward, and especially in the next, let's say 6 months, I think it's helpful to break down the timing and what's going to happen and what I feel I'm able to do in shorter stints that way. Thinking about years at a time right now seems overwhelming, but I would say right now what I'm doing is first protecting my mental health and not getting on the news every day. I now use services that sort of summarize just the highlights, and I'm able to curate it so I'm not inundated with the same things, the same types of information. Of course, I know what's happening. I think, well, it's hard to keep track of all the changes and executive orders that are coming out, but I do have an idea, especially with the ones that have a larger impact. But I also want to know what's going on around the world. I also want to know some of the good news as well. Like, what are the good things that people are doing to make their lives better, to make their friends and families' lives better. So that has been a great help, because I did fear not knowing, being in the dark about important topics, but that service has allowed me to keep my sanity and also stay on top of what's going on in the world. And then I think through that, in sort of keeping track of decisions that are the most impactful, I'm able to then kind of decide how do I want to counterbalance or react to the decision, or just voice my opinion. And it could be the smallest things. Sometimes it's supporting an organization that's advocating for the group that's mostly impacted by the decision. Sometimes it's sending emails to my senators and my representative. And then sometimes it's sharing information with my network, just so additional people can make the best choice as to how to react and how to support and how to advocate. That's where I am right now. And I don't know, for now, I don't want to put the added burden of feeling like I need to do more. I'm going to do what I'm able to do with what I have right now. And as we progress, if what I'm able to do changes, then of course, my reactions and my, I can always share, here's what I did, and here's a group that's working on helping to change this or to overturn. It feels like we're trying to undo a lot of things that are being done. I've also participated in some group discussions that has been helpful. I think just commiserating with people who the word like-minded, but honestly, I rarely agree with like 100% of what someone else believes. That's that's rare. It's not something that I see. I'm not always wanting to only hear things that I already agree with. I welcome different opinions, opposing thoughts. I learn from them. I find that I grow from them. So being parts, just joining those types of groups, I think why those groups, especially in this moment, work for me is that they're peaceful. They're a group of people who want to change, who want to advocate, and who want to stick up for others and do right by their communities, and by people who are constantly being dealt obstacles, difficulties, or trying to be erased. And right now, I think the energy amongst the groups that I've joined is just, let's find peace first, because that's what we want. We want, whatever happens, we would like it to be peaceful. We would like everyone to live in peace. And so if we, as we convene, we're coming at it from a very aggressive and, almost violent approach, then that's just not, that doesn't align with the values. And so those specific groups have served that purpose for me. And I can't say that I'm becoming an active member of those groups, but I am looking to participate more whenever I can, whenever I have the bandwidth, whenever my state of mind allows me to. That's the plan for now. So I hope you all join me for this next season. I do think it's going to be a bit different than previous seasons, because like I said, just talking about my life, I have to include all of these bits of it, and politics has taken such an important role in so many people's lives, even those who have said, I don't do politics. It's at this point, I think it's becoming more and more clear that that can be said, but it doesn't mean that you won't be impacted. And then you need to decide how to react to that and what to do with that realization. So definitely not going to be talking a whole lot about politics. I think it's just more about what I think is happening in terms of, people are saying there's a mass exodus. I don't think it's a mass exodus from the US. I do think a lot of people are considering leaving out of worry, out of fear, and I understand that. So I think there are going to be some episodes that are dedicated just speaking to that, and how you of course, as someone who made that choice, 100% agree and support, but how it can be done in a way that you're not walking into more turmoil or into a place that you're going to just be just as frustrated by a different set of frustrations. So, looking at where you want to go and why you want to go and how you want to go, I think will be a lot of the topics this season. So I look forward to engaging with you all, and of course, as always, sharing and receiving comments and suggestions and your thoughts and questions about making that leap and choosing, as it doesn't, whoever you are, but choosing to leave home in search of different options. So until then, be well. Thank you for listening. Yeah, yeah.